Well, hello, classmates, collegiates, community, creatives, kind folks out there. Ooh, I almost messed that one up again. It's RPG with DBJ. Thank you for joining me today. And well, actually, this entire week, we're talking about curses and blessings too, a little bit in there. The accursed locations in our world. Why? We're talking about accursed locations and environments, and of course, the gamified versions of those traps, lairs, um, puzzles and riddles and those kind of things. We're talking about them today because today is Third Pillar Thursday, and Third Pillar Thursday represents the third pillar of exploration in tabletop games, with combat and social interaction representing the first and second pillar. Sorry to point directly at you, but for some reason, my camera seems to be not focusing in correct. It's got like an autofocus. Got it. All right. Now we're in. Woo. All right. Yep, and the Bermuda Triangle. Yes, absolutely. You guys already joined in. And Pelora even brought up basically hell, and for Future Friday, like nuclear landscape. Basically atomic and nuclear fallout areas. Absolutely. And definitely the superstitions like the Bermuda Triangle. Deadman brought that up yesterday, and you brought up anyway. We are definitely going into it. Okay, so let's do it a little slight overview, because we've been talking about curses and how it seems like they're very related to fairy tales. They are related to divine intervention. They're very closely related to wish fulfillment, and emotional, shall we say, emotional outbursts. People have been wronged. There's violence. There is great loss. Someone raises their fist to the air or to the gods or to the very world itself, and they bring about a curse. And then there are others who are of the mindset that maybe they're oracles or shamans, witches or hags, and and those individuals reach out into the world, either giving their special talents to others or laying down proclamations, maybe proclamations and decrees set before ancient crypts or entire communities, as if to tell people, do this thing, and if you don't do this thing, I will curse you. Or the opposite. Do not enter this area. Do not speak my name. Do not, and you fill in the blank, or else death and destruction will befall you. Well, today with exploration, going into Deadman, talking about the Bermuda Triangle, and Pelora even threw in, hellscapes and such. We're going to talk about accursed locations. I like accursed as opposed to curse, or blessed as opposed to blessed. Just the sound of it, the pronunciation of it, to me just makes it seem it has more weight to it. I feel like it has more emotional baggage attached to it, which we want. And this is an opportunity for us when it comes to using the exploration pillar in tabletop games to really flip our world over. It's a great tool to have something exist in a world that makes no logical sense in and of itself, except within that world. We don't have to follow the guidelines of biology and science and gravity and things. We can have the most strange and bizarre things happen in our world simply due to an accursed magic or power or being or location from another world. So in our world, our adventurers in the world, they're traveling around, they find this information. They could either be part of an accursed act. Maybe they've seen something happen. There's actually modules done in the mid 80s that were called the Desert of Desolation series. And the beginning of that series, the very beginning of the series, and this was kind of a railroad, but follow me on this one. There, because the module series was actually very well done. Dead Man, do me a favor and find that series or even a picture of it if you could. You can put that in the Fantasy Grounds College Discord, where other individuals are listening in and hearing the audio, and you can actually post in there. But anyway, the Desert of Desolation series, in the very beginning of it, first page player characters starts out with them in deep in the desert, and they find a tube, a lamp of some sort, opening it by accident, kind of on purpose, opening it but not understanding what the ramifications were, and they release a jinn and an ifrit. And the module series starts, the adventure series starts from there. And this ifrit and jinn are so powerful that they are forces of nature, and they create the sea of glass from their battles in the sky. And it literally turns the desert into a flat plane of glass. And yeah, there it is, Desert of Desolation. Yeah. And the people that lived in this desert actually sail around on ships with ice skate blades on the bottom of them, sailing across the sea of glass. It's pretty interesting. Kind of strange that the player characters are the ones that caused this, and the entire series is trying to figure out a way to place the ifrit back into the bottle. And of course, there's adventures and all this kind of stuff, and they hear about crypts, and they have to go, dungeon delving into these ancient crypts in the deep desert and such. Yeah, it's very much an advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I suppose that's considered second edition adventure series. But that was a long description to talk about a world in which essentially the curse that put the genie in the bottle was releasing them on the world, which then the battle between an ifrit and the jinn that was set to keep the ifrit locked away ends up cursing the landscape itself. But yes, we've all known of settings like the Dark Suns type settings, like the ravaged wastelands of Kryphoth, and many other settings in which evil powers, the gods, someone somewhere has, experimentations into magic and have scarred the landscape. And essentially those who live there or are trying to escape the spread of this particular thing are need to find heroes, or even there are explorers and others. And of course, word spreads. I love those emojis, Rickard, by the way. Like, whatever you prefer to drink in the morning. Yeah. The idea behind that would just be that there's an area that you just do not want to go. There's always the dark wood, right? Well, why is it the dark wood? We don't know. Maybe someone or something inside of it who lives there, the dark powers that live there, have cursed this place. So let's move over to the Bermuda Triangle. And while we do understand that, in our own world, a number of coincidences linked together, and most people are pretty smart, at least their brain is able to link, to rationalize things that normally wouldn't be a link together. The Bermuda Triangle is a perfect example of a number of coincidental events, all linking together to make something that is undescribable. That, well, there's nothing scientifically that we can explain with this thing, so it must be magic. So in the world, there may be a location, the confluence of a strange looking mountain range and a dark wood where a strange plant lives there, and I don't know, a desert landscape with a funny colored sand. Maybe it's blue, like in Within the Ring of Fire. Maybe it's black, like in Aeronaut or something. Like and what happened? Maybe something happened in the past to change it. And of course, gaming. We want to gamify all of this. Maybe the the black sands of your desolate desert is something different. Maybe when the winds blow, it stings like glass. Thank you, Dead Man, putting in the link to the information about the Bermuda Triangle. Um, Rickard says, I like going the other way rather than an accursed forest or an accursed lost tome. Make it the heart of civilization where the players normally feel safe, the accursed manor in the noble district. Of course. And we're not limited by the size of it, right? Sometimes it just happens to be the manor on the hill and it's surrounded by a fence. And for some reason, it looks old and decrepit in a city that's brand new and clean and no one wants to go into it. It could be the opposite, where there are limited locations where humanity feels safe, and going outside of the walls of the city, you go into an accursed place where instead of the desert being the place you don't want to go into, maybe the people live in the desert, and there are the city states, and then the walls of the city, they close the gates at a certain time, maybe before nightfall, before the winds of black glass blow and can flay flesh open. Bleaching bone, it's so harsh or whatnot. And for myself, as the self-appointed third pillarist, because I'm a dictator. I've taken that position and dare others to take the throne away from me. For me, I take the position that using that the exploration pillar allows us to ramp up the tension and throw in non-combat obstacles and hazards and problems, so that the PCs have to figure out ways to navigate around those things to achieve their goal. So for an example would be, the PCs must make a 3-day journey through this accursed location. Let's stick with the desert for right now. And the black sands blow like razor sharp and it can flay flesh. Excuse me. There are weird giant mutated beasts that slither and swim through the dark sands, and they have to worry about them. Maybe these creatures are blind because the sunlight is so powerful or something, and so anyone that walks across the sand, they can sense their vibrations or something, much like Dune, right? The giant worms of Dune. So maybe that becomes a hazard in and of itself. It could be that when the sun sets, that some other hazards happen. Maybe it becomes freezing cold. Maybe there are bursts of flame through the sand, whatever the case may be. And so by including these hazards, including these obstacles, it's possible a 3-day journey means that they must camp outside of a city to make it. So does this mean that the PCs do a forced march to hurry up to the next city state? When they camp, and if they decide to camp, is it in a safe location? Do they try to find rumors to get to a safe in the desert sands? Maybe there are these like hills and rocky areas that are not settled into the sand, that they can get onto a rise or a plateau to better protect themselves. And do they encounter someone or something in those locations? So for me, the environment most generally is a tension generator. It's a pressure cooker. It is something to use to eliminate analysis paralysis. It is for me, it is the quote, you need to get your ass moving right now, or me as a dungeon master gets to lay the smack down, right? Now, sure, is this a railroady kind of thing? In some ways it is. PCs going across a collapsing bridge. There's not too many options in that. It's either you cross the collapsing bridge before. I mean, you either cross the bridge before it collapses or you don't. But how the players are able to circumnavigate these hazards is the thing. That's not the railroad itself. That is like, hey guys, here's a problem. You figure out how you're going to settle the problem. Hey, if you're in a small town and it's starting to flood and the flood waters are rising, but you have a chest of gold and it doesn't float, and you have innocent people and maybe they're drowning, and the PCs are inside of a building and they have to, maybe, or they're in sewer system and they have to open up a metal grate or whatever. However they handle the hazards that's in front of them, it is the thing. And of course we have our environment, we can use and abuse it. Now, Ricker goes on to say that says, or have an old park in the noble districts that have high walls around it without entrances and guards patrolling around it to ensure no one tries to climb it. Yeah, reminds me of the setting that may or may not come out, Salt and Wounds, about the giant Tarrasque. Yeah, I did a little page through review of that. It's pretty. I love ideas like that. Ricker says, the larger the park, the better. I mean, think about it. A park in the center of the Noble District that is the size of Central Park that no one ever enters. That's a lot of wasted real estate. Oh man, yeah. Yeah, Dead Man says Dragonlance had a grove in the middle of one of the main cities filled with undead. Yeah, and definitely, how your average citizen handles it can kind of give the PCs an indication of like what the hell's going on. Much like we were talking about curses and wives' tales, and like it kind of flows with Fae as well, where the city, like you're saying, there may be a park area that's blocked off and no one is to enter it. It could be a cemetery or a crypt or something where, like you said, they have armed guards or signs posted around it, or the door to the crypt has been sealed shut, with, you see wood planks nailed over top of it and a big sign that says "Do not enter." Of course, the PCs go on in. Yeah, exactly. Hey, Harry, what's going on? Long time. Yeah. Now I don't feel as old. Thank you. But again, there could be, if you have a setting where the undead roam around, it could be that everyone locks their doors away, and each door has something hanging over the eaves that like a hex or some kind of rune or glyph or whatnot that has been, it could have been blessed by a proctor. It doesn't even matter. There could be something placed at the door to keep the undead away, but the PCs, of course, as they are wont to do, are running around in the evening hours in the city, and then there's like ghosts and other undead that shamble around, ghostly ephemeral creatures that come out at night. And of course, everyone's got their windows and doors closed and, pulling the pillows around their ears so they don't hear the screams of the banshees. So you can definitely create regions where the environment itself is strange and blasted, and for example, you got, talking about the area in the Noble District that's walled off. Maybe the ground itself there is literally undulating and boiling, almost as if it's alive, like infected skin, and the boils pop and burst randomly. And of course, it's a big swath of area, like a Central Park in New York. So maybe when a boil pops and busts, it's the size of like, it's larger than your body or your hand could reach out to go around it, and the pus itself might be, spewing out any of your like oozes and jellies or gelatins or puddings or something, and only for it to collapse in on itself and burn the flesh and have it happen again and again. And yeah, Rickard says, I find that accursed places work like horror. The more you know about it, the less impact it has. Exactly. If you could, if these things have happened in the past, the exploration of it, the finding out why it is that people are acting the way they are around this thing. There's always the idea of man, there are things that man was not meant to know. And there may be only a few individuals who are tasked with keeping whatever accursed infection or magic or whatever at bay, and they need to keep the citizens away. And maybe in the beginning, the first generation when this happened, everyone's like, okay, everyone, we need to we all need to make a pact that we're not going to acknowledge this at all, because maybe it spreads if we see it or we interact with it, or it gets on our flesh, or it gets into our minds and our dreams and spreads like a nightmare image that spreads through our dreams. Could you imagine something that breeds due to the nightmares caused by the individuals that see it? It's something that can never be. It's like the Bird Box movie, right? It's the if you see it, it infects you, and everyone sees something different. And maybe once the person dies from the horror, they literally have a heart attack. Their eyes, they want to claw their flesh off, and they're screaming, and they literally die from fright. And then something gives birth in their like a psychic entity gives birth, and it's let loose on the land. And maybe this wouldn't have happened if someone hadn't looked over the wall or looked into the rooms of the old manor on the hill, hadn't gone into the dark forest and looked upon the monolith that's sitting there, or hasn't sailed into the Bermuda Triangle only to come back, the entire crew coming back changed, almost as if their soul's been sucked from them. They're just walking around like mindless automatons when they get back to civilization, and they start to spread whatever it was that took place there. Rickard says, I also like accursed things that are more abstract, like the play in The King in Yellow. I'm not familiar with that reference, The King in Yellow. I've heard the title before, but I'm not familiar with the reference, the storyline. Yes, I definitely agree with you. And thank you very much for posting it in the Discord. Rickard says less it has hit points so we can kill it, and more we can't directly confront it, which is a great way. Oh, and he goes on to say The King in Yellow, a forbidden play which induces despair or madness in those who read it. Yeah, for me, I guess this is a second point about using exploration and the environment. Is it, essentially you can't kill where you live, right? You can't kill storms. You can't kill the sand. You can't hit it and make it go away. Sure, it could spawn terrible. It could be the environment itself could spawn terrible things that you can, open up a can of whoop ass and try to destroy it. But when it rains acid rain, or when you go to sleep and haven't said the right words to keep evil spirits at bay, and their madness may creep into your dreams when you sleep, as opposed to a monster trying to kill you. I believe that this is something that allows the players, not only does it force players to become more creative in how they encounter their world, it also means that there has to be creative solutions. There's a lot of teamwork involved, and the hazards in and of themselves are just things to motivate the players. Although the fear would be to have players fold their arms and go, "This is stupid. Every day we're going to just take damage just walking out in the blasted desert sands, and there's nothing we could do about it. This is stupid." Well, sure, if you take it at face value, but if there are ways to circumnavigate what's going on, the player character that's like, "I'm going to use my Leomund's tiny hut," and you're like, "Sweet, okay," and it starts to get covered with black sand, and everyone's like, "How deep are we going to get when the sandstorm goes over top of us?" And like, "I don't know." Once you let the spell down, who I have to dig many dozens of yards or meters up to the surface or something. It was possible. Sorry, my voice is getting very, very dry. I apologize. But almond milk, the sponsor of this show. No, it isn't. But if they sent me some cash, I sure would push it. I apologize. Very unprofessional, but I had to. And Ricker says, take the play in A King in Yellow. You could destroy the book with the play, but there might be other copies, and there's also something about the tale told that will always have that effect. Yeah, and that's something that's a horror trope. The reading of the book that spreads a horror, taken into modern day, it is the DVD, the VHS tape, the thing that you watch and you'll be dead in 7 days. It is read the Necronomicon and watch yourself go crazy, and hilarity ensues. Right. But also with accursed locations, of course, we have ourselves weather. We can have super strange and horrific weather patterns where hey, everything is beautiful and nice and almost pristine, and then you go over you go into another area, and then of course there are these nasty storms and such. Deadman brings up the cube. There could be artificially created locations. The cube comes to mind. Dark City comes to mind. Even Inception, the movie Inception, about a dream world where either the PCs go into a dreamlike location, maybe like in a Bermuda Triangle. You just happen to sail or travel, or the membrane between the reality of your setting and this other location might be very thin. So if one were to travel on foot or by boat or on horseback or elephant back or camel back to this location, things could change. There's also the idea of much kind of combining the Cube and the Hellraiser series, where there's someone somewhere the Hellraiser series has the lament. Oh, what is the cube called? Wow. Oh, it just left my brain. Anyway, there's a cube, a mystery box cube, and there are people who have gone around the world to find this cube. The lament configuration, that is it. And the cube itself, if you learn the patterns to move the pieces, and it will lift up and turn and change its shape. And while it does so, it both internally and externally, it opens up a doorway to another world, a world of pain and pleasure, and people are drawn into it. And so the PCs, there may be a place where everyone's like, listen, if you find this thing, don't open it. PCs, of course, will probably do it, or someone else in the world. Thank you, Tesla, by the way. Someone else in the world may uncover this thing that thins the membranes between our reality and another one. And who's to say that, the PCs aren't in a giant 3-dimensional maze of rooms and corridors that randomly shift and change, running down a corridor and turning back and finding out there's a wall that's slid and shifted into place. And maybe the walls are made of stone and thickened glass and iron bars and that kind of thing. The Hellraiser. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, thank you, Tesla. Yeah, the lament configuration. I own a prop of that cube. Maybe I'll find it and just let people see it. But yeah, I it doesn't. The prop I have was like $6, $10 or something like that. It doesn't move, but there are people who you could spend hundreds of dollars to find ones that actually are the actual puzzle boxes that move and shift and change and have a glow on the inside. Yeah, Rickard says, I like to think that the book itself isn't cursed. It's the knowledge put to paper. That way the curse can't be solved, but can simply be postponed, which is one of the things when it comes to forbidden knowledge, where that knowledge, it's knowledge that someone really shouldn't have written down, right? But someone bothered to go, "Hey, I know something horrible. I'm going to put it to paper." And then once someone else reads it or sees it, that in and of itself can be the curse. I mean, who knows? There could be a small town where someone's posting putting up posters all around the city of words that are hard to describe, but once you read it, once you see it and start reading it, it affects your mind, and maybe the illiterate can't read it. It's more like it's the old homeless person or the hag or something is shadowy and walking around with a satchel and using a sticky glue and a poster and throwing these things up on walls. And maybe there's yeah, he says one poster per week of the play, the curse slowly taking effect. Yeah, maybe people are actually gathering around and reading it. And in the beginning, they're like, this is interesting, but what are they putting up, poetry or something, or some kind of ballad or whatever? That's cool. And eventually, lo and behold, something's festering in someone's brain somewhere, and they start not acting like themselves. That's awesome. But again, environmentally, spreading madness is in and of itself much like the Bermuda Triangle idea, where it's not necessarily like storms or like heat or cold or floods or getting struck by lightning or earthquakes and things. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something psychological that starts spreading from person to person by going into a certain location, or a curse is spreading across the land, and there are ways to avoid it, whether it is the speaking of the reading of holy texts, the the saying of words to go to sleep so it stays away, the design of special unique items that are left to keep places safe, whether it's hanging something in a window or a door. There's always been in ancient cultures the sacrifice of an animal, goat, pig, cow, calf, something of that nature, and using the blood of that to each person drinks a little bit of it, or they mark their foreheads, or they use it and it's mixed with herbs or some kind of alchemical concoction that is, draws a line around the city or something. Yeah, Dead Man says actually in the eclipse phase, they're called basilisk hacks. A basilisk hack is a computer virus that infects the minds of others by simply looking at it. So as the code passes by your optical sensors, whether it's your biological eyes or digital eyes, simply looking at the code imprints into the brain of the individual. And remember, even if it's something that we can't like consciously read, subconsciously our brains are taking in all of that information, and that's why the basilisk hack works. It is the idea, of course, in the eclipse phase. We're going to talk about this in tomorrow and Future Friday, but in eclipse phase, because of your cortical stack, everything that you see and hear and experience is recorded, even if consciously we can't access our subconscious mind to remember things. So, for example, maybe we think something was blue, but really in reality, it was really green. We could actually go use technology to go back and go, no, it was really green. It wasn't blue like I thought I remembered it, right? And so in this world, in this accursed place, maybe the people in and around, there's lots of things to warn your average citizen, please don't do this thing, read this thing, to go into this location. But if you do, we might have to lock you up. We might have to kill you. We might have to use exorcists to excise those things. As a matter of fact, uh, exorcism isn't really a big thing in role playing game. Not role playing games, in classic hack and slash role playing games. It could be very well a thing in, say, something like Call of Cthulhu or horror games, but PCs, uh, player characters may be tasked with may have a task of using exorcisms on innocent people, because they are literally breeding the horrors that the PCs have to one day fight. So yes, they may be able to confront banshees and ghosts and things like that, that are the living horrors of the people that are breeding them. But every night this person has nightmares, and those nightmares become real. Maybe it's far more efficient and far more effective to have one or more members of the party, the bard and the cleric, go to these people to use the exorcism, while the beefier characters, the more physical characters, are outside fighting off the physical manifestations of the horrors that the people are suffering, right? Now going into let's flow back into our more physical accursed locations. Now, of course, thinking large, again, deserts and dark woods and mountain ranges with winds that blow, that may hypnotize you or charm you or something. There's so many. Yeah. Oh yeah, you definitely use the Discord as well. Yeah. Rickard says a beautiful graffiti of a sunset painted in one of the walls of the town square. Quote, along the shore, the cloud waves break, the twin suns sink behind the lake, the shadows lengthen in Corsica, written below. We brought up the idea. We talked before about the power of words, whether they are um, proclamations of anger, it's poetry, haiku, there are ballads spoken, there are promises made with or without the power of arcane energy behind them, or individuals that are sacrificing something and that curse spreads out from them, harming and infecting everything around them. So it could be that the landscape itself is dying or mutating or changing, much like the idea of, you know, volcanoes, the sinking of Atlantis, right? We know in pop culture there, Atlantis was a surface community with great magic and or technology, and was a great kingdom that fell into the sea for whatever reason due to their hubris and whatnot. And it could be that one or more individuals have brought upon them a curse that is making more and more volcanoes erupt in the setting. Those snow-capped mountain ranges start to explode one after another, i.e. Game of Thrones and Volantis and the 14 volcanic eruptions that sunk Volantis, which, is a thinly veiled theft, literary theft of the sinking of Atlantis and such. Yeah, I mean, we could definitely pull from pop culture and uh, old writings and things about the idea of going into or doing things that man was not meant to know. The Frankenstein's monster is a perfect example of technology going to a dark realm, using body parts to bring a human back to life. And, it is, it's possible, I suppose, if you wanted to go very dark with this, you could say that in the Eberron setting, that the Warforged very much represent technology and things that man was not meant to create or know. And so there may be locations where there are dark factories producing something. There could be something spreading across the landscape little by little, whether it is whether you're, if you want to go far future, there's something spreading from galaxy to galaxy. You want to go medieval, there's something spreading across the landscape. First it spread across the deserts, and now you can almost even see it spreading across the mountains and mountain ranges, and it's coming from the sea and turning the crystal clear blue waters, moving upstream and turning them black and inky. And there could be something spreading along uh, depending on how long this has been going on, maybe people have adapted themselves to traveling in and around these places. People may be infected. Maybe they found that if coat your body and your belongings with a certain type of oil, they will last a certain amount of time. And of course, you always have to have your maybe infestations of locusts and insects and carrion things circling overhead, maybe, or maggots growing, meat rotting very quickly, in disturbing and infecting so many other things around. And I know I keep bringing up infection as a spread, but it just reminds me of maybe mold might be a better descriptor of it, something that's moving across the land. You could even go so far as to say that the very air is very hard to breathe, causing, poison or exhaustion, if you want to gamify it. And um, things may be erupting from the ground, whether they are living creatures erupting from the ground, or geysers of smoke or flame or energy, or solid growths, the world almost terraforming into another accursed place, much like an apocalyptic hellscape type setting, where hell brought to earth. This is very much a portal into the nether regions, the abyss, the nine hells, uh, pandemonium, or something that is spread amongst the real world. And the PCs may need to uncover it or survive it, or who knows, maybe the setting starts out with the player characters leading refugees to a new world to escape the growing infestation that's spreading upon the world. And although you might not want to go this far, it's possible that the player characters, the things they kill, trolls, from trolls to Tarrasques, are actually infecting the landscape itself. Yeah, kill a fiend, it dies, it turns to sludge or whatever, poison gas or something. Maybe explodes into a big pile of like nasty beetles or whatever, and killing it just stains the world, and nothing can grow in that spot. And so, yes, there might be vast armies, and the PCs are leading vast armies holding off the fiendish incursion, but it's not returning the land back to the way it was. And so the mission might not be the mission. Of course, along the way, you got to kill stuff. You got to, wreck shop. But it could be to find something that will at least stop the incursion, to stave it off, but before it could be reversed. Maybe even the PCs must climb to a Mount Olympus type location to beseech divine entities, or to release divine entities, much like the Titans were cast aside or imprisoned, and they must release these godly type beings to have them help them in the world. Or maybe eventually the PCs are going to release them and find out that it was them all along that were going to be granted the power to change what was happening. So flow I squirreled myself with that one. Flowing back into using the environment as well when it comes to layers, puzzles, riddles, traps, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, fifth edition has layer actions, and there's many other games that have something similar. You can make up your own on the fly, but you could definitely steal elements from that to spread that further in the world. I once made a reference to a black dragon and a black dragon's lair in the swamp. You could definitely go, oh, I'll take that lair and just spread that, 1,000-fold amongst the swamp-like area that's starting to creep and grow out beyond its borders. You might want to reduce maybe some of the damage that it causes and such. And and separate it from the so-called control of the creature that has it, and just make it an environmental thing. Of course, we can always reskin traps. There's plenty of like very common traps: pit traps, falling ceiling traps, um, poison dart traps, uh, bear bear claw trap. Step in it and it claps around your ankles or something. You could definitely reskin those things to make that part of this accursed landscape. Maybe this hellscape, you know, has the arms of the accursed undead reach forth out of the ground, grabbing for your ankles or something. That's a great reskin of a bear, a mechanical bear trap, right? A collapsing pit might just be the very ground itself is has died so much that it's just turning into dust, and you walk across the blackened stony landscape, and one single foot will crack the land and it will break apart below your feet and drop you into, and then you can fill the pit with whatever, lava, acid. It drops you into a crevice. It could drop you into, instead of mechanical handmade spikes at the bottom, maybe the blasted land is nothing but blackened glass, and you can get, sharp spikes are literally like blackened glass at the bottom of the pits and such. Collapsing ceilings could be anything from literally abandoned buildings, from in these abandoned towns as refugees have escaped and the buildings themselves are collapsing, to going into, of course, dungeons and the ceiling collapses inside of dungeons, to, well, narratively, you're just describing it as volcanoes spewing forth molten rock and ore, and cools, of course, it's spewing it dozens of miles into the air, and when it lands on the ground, you're just being impacted by rocks and boulders and such. Rickard says, back to remote locations, I found that giving places names makes them stand out even more, like the dark forest versus the dark forest of Mel. Yes, or Mil. Now, giving things names, naming conventions, I think is an overlooked tool in our tool belt as setting creators. That in and of itself is probably its own episode about naming conventions. Sometimes players are ridiculous and they want to name their characters, like, my character is Darky McNasty or something like that, and you're just like, don't do that. Don't. We're here to play a serious game, and you're just being foolish. So naming conventions are very important, simply because our language, every word we have in our language comes with it, and the combination of those words brings with it some form of identifier. It brings forth memories in our interaction with those words. Like if I say the word elephant or horse or cauliflower or tube socks, it brings forth images and reminds us of something, of our interaction with it or lack of interaction with said word. So yeah, naming conventions are very important. Rickard says, ways to challenge players in a cursed area, a cursed area without resulting to save rolls like will or wisdom or other save stat. When they rest for the night, have them fight a combat and they all fall asleep. Or goes on every day after that they must make a save to stay awake. If everyone falls asleep, they fight another combat. That gets harder and harder. If they die in the dream, they become weaker to the curse. Ooh, I like those kind of things. I definitely like that. Yeah, go ahead. Send me that record about the naming conventions. Yeah, you definitely could very much do something where, like the PCs maybe have to force themselves to stay awake, or there is something. I didn't create this. This was created in a book series by C.S. Friedman, the Coldfire series, where there was a woodland area. And I say this very, very generally. It was black stone, and in the woods there were these white trees, leafless trees. And when inspected, the trees were like bone. And the main characters were traveling through this woods, and they were like, everyone's afraid of coming in here, but there's nothing around here. There's nothing dangerous. We're just walking through black land and these white trees that extend forever. And eventually they get tired and they're like, oh, I'm tired. I don't know why I'm so sleepy. Oh, yeah, you know what? I'm tired too. And they go to rest. And suddenly one of them wakes up and it's like, wow, did I just pass out? Did I just fall asleep? And realizes they can't, their eyes are awake and their brain is awake, but their body can't move. And they slowly try to pull themselves up, and they realize that little white tendrils were growing up through their clothing into their flesh. And they realize, as they inspect more and more of the trees, as they go deeper and deeper, that the trees are not really trees, but the people have died, and the trees are like bone growing out of the rib cages of the people that fell asleep in this wooded area. And literally they fell asleep and died. They fell asleep and they simply just decomposed and died. And that in and of itself, that's a great hazard. That is, it just, Rickard, you just brought that to mind. Like, hey, guess what? Stay still, you'll fall asleep. Oh, shoot, that means we got to keep moving. We need to take a short rest. Sure. Okay, you're going to take a short rest, make a save. What? Go ahead and make that wisdom save. Go ahead and make that intelligence save. Really? Yeah, go ahead. No, it's not Constitution. It's there's something in the air. There's something accursed affecting you that just makes you, everything's peaceful. You're starting to think about home. You're thinking about all the gold you're going to get when you get to the dungeon. And hey guys, 9 hours have passed. What? Oh, did we get a rest? Maybe, but you can't move. What? You see something growing off of your flesh. What a great hazard. And maybe many of those hazards those are the kinds of hazards and obstacles the PCs may have to confront in an accursed place. Something wants to get something psychically is confusing them, getting them lost while they are trying to navigate. Something wants to make them fall asleep and they have to stay awake. There is so much darkness that the sun just cannot rise in the sky, or a permanent eclipse has eclipsed the sun. I know many people, dark vision is something that's given away like candy in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, but its limitation is no color, and it has a specific range. So maybe things outside of its range that are unperceived are the horrors you can play with. Oh, your dark vision is 60 feet. Something is playing around outside that range. You hear it, you smell it, you feel its motion. You can feel the presence of how large it is. Maybe there's something horrible that if the PCs close their eyes, they feel it rubbing against their flesh. And if they open their eyes, they see the thing that they fear most might be rubbing against them. So, for example, maybe you as the game master, you describe thick fur, and you feel like players, you feel like something with thick, spiny fur move against you. It is a large creature, maybe taller than yourselves by at least half your size. It breathes. Its breath is heavy with musk, and it growls in front of your face. What do? You're like, well, I open my eyes and strike it. And the game master, you're like, what do you think it is? You think it's like an owlbear? Do you think it's a displacer beast? Or do you think it's a warg? And they're like, I don't know. It's like a wolf, probably. Okay, you open your eyes and it's a wolf, right? It's a big giant warg, right? You could play with that, where maybe you have a randomized chart as the players have their eyes closed and they move move through this area where something's rubbing against them. Maybe they feel scales and then fur and then something smooth and then something mechanical. And it's literally in their mind as like this nightmarish region. There's also the idea that a curse has no power until it is encountered. It is in science, there's something about like the act of perceiving something gives it its name. Have a great day. I love you. Love you, baby. Good luck. The Heraldrix has called forth and set that we have come upon our hour in talking about exploration. I didn't give too many hints or tips or tricks or whatever talking about the exploration pillar. But again, oh man. Rickard says another way, the further they travel into the accursed area, the less light their torches give off. In the beginning, they see shadows creeping in from the corners of their eyes. The shadows disappear when they point the torch that way. Later, one torch barely illuminates the square around one person, so more and more torches are needed to light up the area. If anyone puts a limb out into the darkness, they can feel some force trying to claw its way into them through the exposed part. And I love that. I think even with dark vision, you could still play with that. There's still something crazy about like when you are in the exposed light, there's like a light dome that's created when you're in darkness, that if you go beyond that dome of light, you can't see what's on the other end of it. It's almost as if by having more light, you create more darkness beyond that region. And even if that region is far away, 5th edition it's 60 feet for dark vision. With torches, I think it's like 10 feet or whatnot. Even if something is beyond that region in that dim portion of it, the player characters may see something creeping towards them, maybe very slowly, like an ooze or a tentacle. It could be coming very quickly with berserkers running out of the darkness coming after them, but they may not be able to. They may not be able to count the numbers. Oh, there's beetles coming across the land. Hey, let's kill the beetles. Kill. How many more are there? You as the dungeon master, you're like, you don't know. We've killed 13 berserker orcs. Okay. How many more are there? I don't know. You hear an army of them. You can't count them because you can't see them. Yeah. Rickard says, with dark vision, just make dark vision not work. That makes it even worse. Or have the PC with dark vision, let them see the darkness sway as if a wind is blowing through it. Or we kind of brought this up a little bit in our subterranean talk or underdark talk, that there may be things for creatures that only use or are hyper aware of using dark vision, that there are things that can blind people with dark vision. I'm a little weary of like just saying it doesn't work, but I definitely would put barriers in the way so that PCs could have to figure out ways to circumvent it. But absolutely, like, and who's to say that, like you said, the wind is blowing through? Who's to say the darkness isn't solid? The darkness could be something that seems like it's alive. It's blowing like a smoke or something. You give it, you use narration to give it a life of its own, a power, and that in and of itself we talked about this in our aberrant idea, right? There, charm person in and of itself, great. The evil thing tries to control your mind. Even though it's less efficient, it's something different if someone drops a slug on your neck and it crawls in towards your ear and tries to control your mind, right? Sometimes the narrative, the descriptor itself, in and of itself makes it creepier, and that's really great. Rickard says, well, if darkness doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's the darkness. It's not natural dark. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're adventuring in an accursed place. Who's to say that the rules don't change? The rules do not operate the way they are. Or better yet, Using dark vision opens you up to the horrors that people who don't have dark vision do not see. It is the they live concept, right? It's the yeah, there are some things man was not meant to know, and you are using something to perceive things that shouldn't be there. It is the detect magic, the true sight. It is I'm going to pierce through the illusion. And okay, you look into the heart of pure evil, make a roll because you're going to go insane, right? It very much could be, and again, sometimes perception makes reality. There could be creatures out there who do not perceive the PCs until they are perceived themselves. It is a strange and bizarre concept to think about, that using your dark vision sees the creature and the creature now sees you. Uh, what's the someone's got to tell me in the Discord or the chat. When is the quote, when you look into the abyss looks right back into you, or something? Anyway, guys, we've come to the end of the stream. Thank you very much for joining me. I am DBJ. Guys, just go down uh, into the foundation. You'll see everything there, including joining the Fantasy Grounds Discord if you want to learn about Fantasy Grounds. We simulcast into Fantasy Grounds, the Discord as well, the audio, and you can post there. You can join us in the boiler room. Just go to the left, slide down to the boiler room, join everyone there. I'm a contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing. My baby is the cinematic environs. I love it so much. So there's a lot of information in and of itself. So guys, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for allowing me to do a little self-promotion there. Thank you very much. Have a great day. I will see thee tomorrow for Future Friday.